Let's start by getting clear on what this section is going to be doing for you. Before we get deeper into Togaf concept, you need a map of the territory. And this is exactly what this opening part gives you. Welcome to J.K. Michael's Knowledge Series. And we're going to be diving into the Module 2 of Togaf Foundation. Now that we've established the section is a roadmap, let's move into what is actually preparing you to understand. In simple terms, it introduces the core ideas behind enterprise architecture and the Togaf standard. It prepares you to understand what an enterprise is, why architecture matters, what it brings, the major supporting concepts such as abstraction, repository, capability, risk, and gap analysis. Think of this section as what you must know before the exam moves deeper. Listen to what I just said. Which of these concepts sounds most strategic to you and which sounds more like an architecture support concept? Now, let's move into the first major question this section says you must be able to answer. And that question is fundamental. What is enterprise? An enterprise is not just a company. In Togaf, it can be any group of organizations or units working towards common goals. You need to note here that this is a high-value distinction. A likely distractor is any answer that reduces enterprise to only a company or a formal organization. For instance, a transformation spans internal departments, outsourced partners, and shared service teams. If you define the enterprise too narrowly, the architecture will miss part of the real operating system. A clear scenario for an organization: the project team assumed the enterprise was only the internal IT department, and later they discovered that customers, channels, operations, and the external vendors were all part of the real architecture problem. We've established the scope of concern. The next question becomes, what exactly is enterprise architecture within that scope? Enterprise architecture is the structured way of understanding and shaping an enterprise so that the business goals, the processes, information, application, and technology works together. Expect questions that test whether you can distinguish enterprise architecture from narrow solution design or technical modeling. If you look at this from a real perspective, an organization has strong business strategy, strong technology teams, but poor connection between them. Enterprise architecture is what helps those parts work together coherently. This definition matters because it keeps architecture from being trapped inside technology alone. It's about enterprise-wide alignment. Now that we have defined enterprise architecture, let's move to the next natural question. Why does it exist? Its purpose is to help the enterprise move from where it is now to where it wants to be in a controlled and aligned way. Something you need to ponder about: why is controlled and aligned just as important as move from where it is now to where it wants to be? A likely distractor is any answer that defines architecture as only documentation or analysis without change enablement. For instance, a company launches transformation work quickly, but because the change is not aligned, project pulls in different directions and value is lost. Architecture is not valuable just because it describes. It is valuable because it helps change happen well. Now that we've established the purpose of enterprise architecture, the next question becomes, what practical value does it create? EA helps with alignment, better decision, reuse, reduce duplication, improve change, and better investment planning. This is a strong exam area because benefit lists are easy to test through recognition or distinction questions. An organization thought architecture was slowing things down until it uncovered how many duplicated tools and investment had accumulated across teams. The business case became obvious once duplication was visible. Now that we have covered enterprise, architecture, purpose, and benefits, the next becomes, why is Togaf the framework being used to support all of this? Togaf provides a common language, method, structure, and supporting concept for designing and managing architecture. I need you to remember 4 exact reasons in the source: common language, method, structure, and supporting concept. The framework becomes powerful when it reduces confusion and increases consistency. This is one of the main reasons Togaf matters. I need to ask you, where in your work would more consistent language and structure reduce friction? Established why Togaf is suitable as a framework, let's move into the kinds of architecture it actually covers. Togaf works across different architecture domains, especially business, data, application, and also technology. A classic distractor is assuming Togaf is only about technical or infrastructure architecture. For instance, an organization improves its application landscape but ignores business process changes and data dependencies, leading to poor adaptation and inconsistent outcome. That is why Togaf pushes you to think in a more integrated way. Architecture only becomes enterprise architecture when the domain are considered together. The question here is, which architecture domain gets the most attention where you work and which gets the least? Now we understand Togaf spans multiple domains. The next question becomes, how do you make the level of complexity understandable? What is architecture abstraction? Abstraction means simplifying complexity so people can understand and work with the enterprise at the right level of detail. You should be ready to distinguish abstraction from loss of meaning. The key phrase is the right level of detail. For instance, a technical team presents architecture using highly detailed diagrams to business leaders, but the audience cannot engage because the detail is not at the right level. Abstraction is what makes architecture useful to different audiences. Without it, the enterprise is either too vague or too overwhelming. We've established how complexity is managed conceptually. Let's move into how architecture assets are classified and stored. We'll be looking at 2 closely related distinct concepts: enterprise continuum and architecture repository. What is enterprise continuum? A way of classifying architecture and solution assets from generic to organizational specific. So what is an architecture repository? A structured store for architectural artifacts, models, standards, and reusable materials. If you understand one as classification, the other as storage, how does that help you avoid confusing them? The high-risk confusion points, be ready to distinguish. Enterprise continuum is equals classification. Architecture repository equals storage. An organization wants to reuse architecture assets but has no clear classification approach and no reliable place to store reusable content. So which of this hurts your organization the most? Poor classification of assets or poor storage and reuse of them? Now we've distinguished the classification and storage, let's build on that by looking at how architecture content is organized and how the organization becomes able to do architecture effectively. We're looking at 2 connected ideas. First, architecture content. It must be organized clearly, including relationships between key architectural elements. And secondly, the organization needs capability. That's the people, the process, skills, governance, and tools to create and maintain architecture over time. So what is Togaf content framework and enterprise meta models? These help organize architectural deliverables, artifacts, and the relationship between key architectural elements. What's an architectural capability? These are the people, that's you and I, processes, skills, governance, and tools needed to create and also maintain enterprise architecture. The question here is, why is it not enough to have architecture content if the organization lacks the capability to maintain and use it? To be ready for the exams, to distinguish between content organization and relationships, organizational ability to perform architectural work, unlikely distractor will be treating architecture capability as a business capacity only. For instance, an organization produces architectural artifacts but has weak governance and no repeatable architecture process, so the content does not stay useful for long. This is where architecture shifts from documentation to discipline. You need both structure, content, and the capability to sustain it. So let's shake some tables. Which is more underdeveloped in your environment right now? Is it content structure or architecture capability? So now let's move into two final supporting concepts that sometimes are mentioned together but should not be confused: risk management and gap analysis. Risk management focuses on uncertainty that may affect outcomes, while gap analysis focuses on differences between current state and target state. Both support architectural work, but they answer different questions and should not be treated as the same thing. So the question is, what is risk management? The identification, assessment, and response to uncertainties that may affect outcome. What is gap analysis? A technique for comparing the current state with the target state to identify what is missing, what must change, and what must be created. I need to confirm, which question does gap analysis answer that risk management does not? I need you to answer that. A likely exam trap is assuming these two concepts are interchangeable. They are related, but are not the same. For instance, a transformation identifies missing capabilities between current and target state, while also managing uncertainty around budget, compliance, and even delivery time. These two concepts usually appear together in real world, which is why they are easy to blur. But one is about difference and the other is about uncertainty. I can give you a clear example here. A team has a clear picture of what was missing from the target state, but underestimated data migration risk. This gap analysis was strong, but their risk management was not. Now, we have worked through the major concept. Let's step back and look at how this section is designed to work as a learning structure. What I need you to know here is, how would your revision improve if you turned each listed question into a personal checklist item? This is really very important.